Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. They broke the rules of war, so Earth sent its deadliest fleet. The attack that changed everything. The MedStar Hope was one of Earth's most respected hospital ships, known across the galaxy for its humanitarian missions. It carried no weapons, no soldiers, and no war machines, only doctors, nurses, and medics who worked tirelessly to save lives, no matter which species they treated. The ship's exterior was painted pure white, glowing softly in the darkness of space with a bright red cross symbol on its hull, making it clear that it was protected under galactic law. No faction, no empire, and no military had ever dared attack a hospital ship, but that day, everything changed. The MedStar Hope had just finished evacuating wounded civilians from a war-torn colony in the neutral zone, its medical bays overflowing with the injured. Some were humans, others were aliens from different worlds, all receiving the same care from the doctors aboard. The crew believed they were safe. The ship was in open space, well beyond any battle lines, and its distress beacon transmitted a continuous signal to confirm its neutral status. Then, without warning, the alarms blared across the ship as unidentified ships approached fast. A crew member shouted, his voice trembling with fear. The main screen flickered to life, displaying a fleet of black warships moving in perfect formation, their weapons charged and locked onto the hospital ship. There was no hail, no warning, no demands, they were coming to attack. Captain Eyeless Monroe, a veteran officer who had spent decades leading medical relief missions, immediately stood up from his chair. His heart pounded, but he forced himself to remain calm. "Broadcast our identification codes on all frequencies," he ordered. "Remind them, we are a hospital ship under galactic law, we are unarmed." The communications officer obeyed, sending the message in every known language. The ship's signal flared brightly, its white hull unmistakable, yet the enemy ships did not slow down. A moment later, the first shot was fired. A plasma beam cut through the darkness of space, slamming into the MedStar Hope's hull. The ship shuddered violently, and emergency sirens filled the air. Red warning lights flashed across the bridge as damage reports poured in. "They hit our engine bay," an officer screamed. Captain Monroe's hands gripped the armrests of his chair, his face pale. "This is a mistake," he whispered. They couldn't attack a medical vessel. But then the second shot came, then the third. Panels exploded, sparks rained from the ceiling, the oxygen alarm screamed as fire spread through the lower decks. In the medical bay, doctors and nurses rushed to protect the wounded, trying desperately to stabilize those who were already clinging to life. "Send a distress signal," Monroe commanded. "Someone out there will stop this." The distress beacon flashed into space, bouncing from relay to relay, reaching nearby trade routes and military outposts. But there was no response. "They're jamming us," the communications officer whispered, horror creeping into his voice. Then came the worst nightmare. The enemy ships launched boarding pods, sharp, spear-like vessels that stabbed into the hospital ship's weakened hull. Within moments, armed soldiers poured in, their armor gleaming under the emergency lights. They did not speak, they did not hesitate, they opened fire. Doctors and nurses, unarmed and defenseless, were gunned down where they stood, patients too weak to move were executed in their beds. No one was spared. Monroe gritted his teeth as he watched the security cameras, his people, slaughtered by soldiers who had no mercy. He turned toward his officers, his voice shaking with rage. "Someone has to stop this." The communications officer, bleeding from a cut on his forehead, managed to reroute power to a secondary transmitter. "We have just enough energy for one last transmission," he gasped. "One message, one chance." Monroe did not hesitate, he spoke clearly, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "This is the MedStar Hope. We are under attack. Hospital ship, neutral vessel, being slaughtered. If anyone can hear this, Earth must know, tell them." Then a sudden explosion rocked the ship, and the message was cut off. The MedStar Hope was gone, but the transmission had escaped and was heading straight for Earth. Deep within Earth's Solar Defense Command, Admiral Marcus Steele sat at the heart of the most powerful military force humanity had ever assembled. He had spent decades preparing for wars, managing fleets, and securing alliances, but nothing could have prepared him for the message that arrived that day. It was only 12 seconds long, 12 seconds of static, of desperate voices, of terror. This is the MedStar Hope. We are under attack. Hospital ship, neutral vessel, being slaughtered. If anyone can hear this, Earth must know, tell them. Then silence. Admiral Steele's jaw tightened as he listened to the transmission again and again. It had taken hours for the broken signal to be routed through relays, bouncing from abandoned outposts and passing ships before it finally reached the Solar Defense Command headquarters. By then, it was already too late, the MedStar Hope was gone. Steele slowly turned his gaze toward the massive holomap in front of him. It displayed every active military movement in the galaxy, every known pirate raid, every skirmish between warring factions, but this was different. A hospital ship, a purely medical vessel, had been hunted down and destroyed. No government, no empire, no species had ever dared cross that line. Even the most brutal warlords respected the sacred neutrality of medical ships. It was an unwritten law of the stars, one that had just been shattered. Who did this? Steele asked, his voice a low growl. The intelligence officer standing beside him hesitated. The energy signatures match a faction we've had little contact with, the Zaruri Dominion. Steele's fingers curled into a fist. The Zaruri were a powerful but isolationist empire, known for their militaristic culture, their ruthless conquests, and their belief in their own superiority. But never, in all recorded history, had they attacked the hospital ship. Are we certain? Steele demanded. 100%, the officer confirmed. The boarding signatures, the weapon patterns, even the attack formation, everything points to them. Steele exhaled sharply. He had seen many battles, many atrocities, but this was something else. This is not a battle, he said, his voice cold. This is a massacre. For a moment, there was only silence in the war room. Officers, strategists, and fleet commanders exchanged uneasy glances, knowing exactly what this meant. It was an act of war. Steele turned to his second-in-command, Vice Admiral Sarah Caldwell. Prepare the fleet, he ordered. Caldwell nodded, understanding without question. How many ships? She asked. Steele's eyes darkened. All of them. The room fell deathly silent. Earth's entire war fleet, a force that had spent decades in preparation, built for conflicts that never came, was about to be unleashed. The Zaruri Dominion had made a fatal mistake. They thought humanity was weak, they thought Earth would stay silent. But now, war was coming, and humanity would not hold back. The war drums of humanity began beating across the vastness of space, in the military strongholds of Earth and its colonies. The call to arms echoed like a storm. Warships that had once rested in silent readiness now roared to life, engines burning bright as they prepared for total deployment. The Zaruri Dominion had made a mistake, a fatal one, and Earth's response would be absolute. In the heart of Luna Command, the largest military headquarters outside of Earth, Vice Admiral Sarah Caldwell stood in front of a holoscreen, watching fleet after fleet report combat readiness status updates. All 5 primary battle groups are deploying as we speak. The SO Defense Fleet is mobilized, Task Force Hammer is moving out of Mars Station, and the carrier battle groups from Titan are already en route to the rally point, estimated full readiness in TUS 10 hours. 10 hours. 10 hours. Caldwell's jaw tightened. That wasn't fast enough. Accelerate deployment, she said. We need to be moving within 6 hours. The officer hesitated. Ma'am, that could cause logistical, then fix it, Caldwell snapped. We are not delaying, we are going to war. The officer swallowed hard and saluted. Meanwhile, aboard the HSS Vengeance, the command ship of Earth's fleet, Admiral Marcus Steele stood on the bridge, staring out at the vast expanse of space. His face was carved from stone, his expression unreadable, but those who knew him could see the fire burning behind his eyes. He had fought many battles, he had defended Earth and its allies from countless threats. But never before had he seen such an act of pure barbarity, a hospital ship, innocent and unarmed, reduced to debris, a massacre. And now, humanity would speak in the only language the Zaruri understood, war. "Admiral," a voice called. It was Captain Ellis Hartman, his most trusted officer. "All battle groups are moving into position." Steele gave a slow nod. "How many ships are we fielding?" "Every available warship," Hartman answered. "We have over 3,000 vessels at full readiness, our carriers alone are launching over 10,000 fighter squadrons, 3,000 warships, 10,000 fighters, enough firepower to erase an empire, and this was only the first wave." Steele turned to face his officers. "Make sure every captain, every pilot, every soldier understands something. We are not here for conquest, we are not here for politics, we are here for justice." A murmur of agreement rippled through the bridge. Steele continued, his voice turning iron. "They murdered our people. They slaughtered doctors, nurses, civilians. They crossed the one line that no species dares to cross." He took a step forward, his presence towering. "We will show them what it means to provoke Earth. We will end this threat, not with words, but with fire and steel." Silence then fell. In unison, every officer stood at attention and saluted. Steele turned toward the viewport once more. Ahead of them, the largest fleet in human history was assembling, a force of war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Zaruri had struck first, but Earth would strike last. The countdown had begun, and when the fleet arrived, the Zaruri Dominion would burn. The Zaruri Dominion had ruled over dozens of star systems for centuries. They had crushed rebellions, silenced entire civilizations, and enforced their dominance with an iron fist. Their fleets were feared across the galaxy, and their warriors were ruthless. And yet, for the first time in their history, they knew fear. The warning alarms blared across every major Zaruri world, defense stations scrambled their fleets, planetary governors shouted conflicting orders, admirals rushed to assemble their warships, because something was coming, something unstoppable. Humanity's war fleet had arrived. Aboard the Zaruri command station, High Admiral Excel Voran stood frozen in place as he stared at the holographic display. The battlefield was lighting up with thousands of enemy signatures, ships, so many ships, it was impossible. "No species has ever launched an attack of this scale," one of his officers stammered. "The humans, how can they field so many warships?" Zoran's mandibles twitched. The Zaruri fleet had strength, they had power, they had weapons that had broken empires before, but not like this, not against this level of fury. The human fleet dropped out of warp just beyond the Zaruri home system. The stars themselves seemed to tremble as thousands of warships emerged from the darkness of space. It was not just an armada, it was an invasion force unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Carriers stretched for miles, battleships gleamed like mountains of steel and fire, and the colossal dreadnoughts, some the size of cities, loomed over the battlefield. Among them, Earth's finest warships took their place at the front, their weapons primed, their shields glowing like the fury of an unyielding storm. Admiral Steele stood on the bridge of the HSS Vengeance, eyes locked on the enemy defenses. "The Zaruri fleet is mobilizing," Captain Hartman reported. "They scrambled everything they have." Steele exhaled slowly, then said, "They've chosen war." He turned to his communications officer. "Open the channel," he ordered. The transmission crackled to life across the Zaruri Dominion. The voice of humanity rang clear and unforgiving. "This is Admiral Marcus Steele of the United Turan Navy. You have committed an act of war against the human race. You have murdered civilians, you have crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. Your war crimes will not go unanswered. You have one chance, surrender or be erased. The galaxy held its breath. Then came the reply, a defiant, hissing voice. You are insects, the Zaruri High Admiral sneered. You will be crushed just like the others who have dared to challenge us. A cold silence followed. Steele's eyes hardened. So be it, he said. He turned toward his fleet, and with a single command, began the assault. The sky ignited as Earth's warships roared forward. The battle had begun, and the Zaruri Dominion would never be the same again. The first salvo of war shattered the silence of space. The human fleet unleashed hellfire from the HSS Vengeance, the main rail guns charged with a deep, menacing hum, their barrels glowing red-hot before they fired with the force of a dying star. The kinetic slugs, each the size of a starfighter, tore through the void, traveling at speeds no Zaruri shield could withstand. The first impact was devastating. A Zaruri battleship exploded instantly, its hull splitting apart like fragile glass. The ship's debris spiraled into others, causing a chain reaction of destruction across the battlefield. Earth's dreadnoughts fired their heavy plasma cannons, turning the darkness of space into a storm of death. Bright blue lances of energy sliced through enemy formations, leaving nothing but burning wreckage in their wake. Then came the fighters, hundreds, no, thousands of human strike craft rushed into the fray, weaving through enemy fire like predators hunting their prey. The Zaruri defenses crumbled inside the command station. Admiral Excel Voron's mandibles quivered with disbelief. This isn't possible, he muttered, watching as his fleet was torn apart. The humans were relentless. For every Zaruri ship destroyed, another 10 human warships took its place. Their formations were perfect, their firepower overwhelming, their strategy precise. For centuries, the Zaruri Dominion had been the galaxy's dominant force. They had conquered worlds, enslaved entire species, and now they were the ones being hunted. Admiral, our defenses are failing, one of his officers cried out. The Zaruri fleet was trying to retreat, but the humans weren't allowing it. Destroyers blocked their escape routes, battleships flanked their formations, and carrier-based fighters shredded their fleeing ships apart. Humanity had come for vengeance, and they would not stop until justice was delivered. On the bridge of the HSS Vengeance, Admiral Steele stood firm. All ships, advance, he commanded. The fleet pushed forward like an unstoppable tide, crushing any resistance that remained. Missiles streaked through the void, torpedoes detonated inside enemy hulls, laser fire reduced warships to floating wrecks. Then a new transmission came through, a desperate, frantic voice, please, we surrender. We surrender. Steele's eyes remained cold. He did not forget the hospital ship they had destroyed, he did not forget the thousands of innocent lives lost. But humanity was not like the Zaruri, they did not kill for sport. With a deep breath, he turned to his officers. Stand down, he ordered, and the human fleet halted its attack. The remaining Zaruri ships floated aimlessly, crippled, burning, and defeated. It was over. Earth had answered their crime with fire and fury, and now the Zaruri Dominion would never dare to challenge humanity again. The transmission reached the Zaruri homeworld like a dying ghost. Admiral Excel Voron's desperate message, filled with static and terror, was the last transmission the High Command received before his fleet was wiped out. In the grand throne room of the Zaruri Dominion, the air was thick with unease. The Emperor of the Zaruri, Supreme Warlord Siramak, sat upon his towering obsidian throne, his golden armor reflecting the dim light of the war chamber. His 4 crimson eyes twitched as he listened to the final words of his once mighty admiral, "We surrender. We surrender." Then silence, the message cut off, leaving only the distant hum of the throne room's ancient machinery. The Emperor's claws tightened on his armrests, his spiked tail slammed against the stone floor, sending a loud crack through the chamber. The assembled generals and nobles flinched, their antennae curling in fear. No one had ever heard a Zaruri fleet surrender before, and now they were gone, destroyed by humans. The warlords and ministers spoke all at once, their voices filled with panic and disbelief. "This cannot be real," one hissed, his mandibles clicking nervously. "The humans were supposed to be weak." "Another," snarled another, "They are not weak," growled Supreme General KK, the Emperor's most trusted war leader, his dark armor bearing the scars of 1,000 battles. But for the first time, fear flickered in his reptilian gaze. "They wield power we do not understand," he continued. "Their fleet moves with precision, their weapons tear through our strongest shields, their tactics are not those of prey, they are of predators." The Emperor's voice cut through the air like a blade. "We demand an explanation," he growled. "Why have you unleashed such destruction upon my fleet?" Steele's expression didn't change, his gaze remained unshaken. "You attacked a hospital ship," he said steadily. "You murdered the wounded, the healers, the innocent." The Zaruri generals shifted uncomfortably, some looking away. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "They were in our space. They were unarmed." Steele interrupted, "They carried no weapons. They were on a mission of peace." The Emperor's claws tapped against his throne. "It was a mistake." Steele's eyes darkened. "Mistakes have consequences." The Zaruri warlords watched in silence. For the first time in their history, their emperor was forced to negotiate out of fear. The mighty Dominion, which had crushed entire worlds, was now at the mercy of a species they had dismissed as insignificant. The humans have won, Earth's fleet still loomed in their skies, ready to strike again. A heavy silence filled the Zaruri throne room. Emperor Sira Mak sat frozen on his obsidian throne, his 4 crimson eyes locked onto the cold, unflinching gaze of Admiral Steele. Every Zaruri noble and warlord in the chamber felt the weight of what was happening. For the first time in their empire's long history, they were on the defensive, forced to answer for their crimes. Outside, the void of space was no longer their domain. The once invincible Zaruri fleets were shattered, their warships reduced to burning wreckage, and looming above their homeworld was the full force of Earth's war fleet, a fleet that had torn through them like a cosmic storm. Sira Mak's mandibles twitched and his tail curled in barely restrained anger. "What is it you want, human?" he growled, his voice heavy with frustration. Admiral Steele did not blink. He stood tall, his uniform crisp, his presence an unshakable force. "We don't want revenge," he said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of judgment. "We don't want war, but we do demand justice." The Zaruri warlords exchanged uneasy glances. They were used to enemies begging for mercy, not standing in defiance. The idea that humans, mere primitives as they had once thought, could be making demands was unthinkable, and yet here they were. The Emperor exhaled slowly. "And what does Earth call justice?" Steele's gaze hardened. "First, you will publicly admit to your crimes," he said. "You will broadcast to the entire Dominion that you fired upon a defenseless hospital ship, that you slaughtered the helpless, and that you tried to cover it up." A ripple of unease moved through the Zaruri officials, such an admission was unheard of. The Zaruri never admitted weakness. The Emperor's claws dug into the arms of his throne. "And if we refuse?" Steele's lips curled into something that was not quite a smile. "Then the war doesn't end today." The chamber grew colder. The meaning was clear, the humans had already proven their power. They had destroyed fleets, burned warships, and shattered the illusion of Zaruri superiority. If Earth chose to continue the fight, there would be nothing left of the Dominion. Sira Mak's breath was slow and controlled, but his mind raced. The pride of his people battled against the reality of the situation. The Dominion was powerful, but it was not invincible, and these humans, these creatures they had mocked, had revealed a terrifying truth: they were not the ones who should have been feared. A decision was forming. "We will make the announcement," Steele stated. "That is only the first step. The Zaruri Dominion will issue a formal treaty with Earth and the United Systems." Steele continued, "There will be no further aggression, no future attacks on human vessels, whether military or civilian, and if another war breaks out, one of the Zaruri generals hissed, trying to sound defiant, then Earth will not show mercy again. A deep, primal instinct ran through every Zaruri in the room. It was the feeling of prey realizing it was not the predator. 2 days later, the galaxy watched in shock as the unthinkable happened. The Zaruri Dominion, a civilization built on war and conquest, sent a transmission across every known system. Emperor Siramak himself stood in the center of the broadcast, his massive form stiff with anger, but his words undeniable: "We attacked a defenseless human ship. We believed them to be weak. We were wrong." The message echoed across the stars, heard by allies and enemies alike. The mighty Zaruri, the unbreakable warriors of the void, had been broken, and Earth had just rewritten galactic history. Humanity was no longer prey, they were a force that no empire, no warlord, and no tyrant would ever dare to underestimate again.